welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, April 17. Taiwan carries out live-fire military drill. The World Health Organization says almost half of the patients with H7N9 didn't catch it from poultry. And a Chinese exchange student dies in the Boston Marathon bombings. The Chinese regime has vowed to retake Taiwan by force if necessary. Even though the current government in Taiwan has tried to establish closer ties with the mainland, a live-fire military drill this week shows the island remains wary of the military threat from across the strait.
Earlier today, thousands from Taiwan's Navy, Air Force, and Army conducted live-fire drills simulating an attack from China along the shores of the Penghu Island. Taiwan carries out military drills every year, but this was the first time in 5 years that live ammunition is being used. Taiwanese President Ma Ying-jeou, often viewed as sympathetic towards Beijing, had these harsh words for its neighbor across the Taiwan Strait.
In recent years, due to China's economic boom, it has built its military and arms. Thus, facing such a threat, we must strengthen and build our army's morale and be prepared for war in order to maintain the peace across the strait. In fact, what really matters is not the size of this outside threat, nor if we cannot receive military aid from other countries, but that it is within our power to effectively defend ourselves.
Most countries have limited, if any, official diplomatic contact with Taiwan. That's usually a prerequisite the Chinese regime imposes on any country they interact with. It became another point of contention between Japan and China last month. Japan invited a Taiwanese delegate to sit with diplomatic representatives at the 2-year anniversary of the March 11th tsunami. The United States, however, has provided Taiwan with military hardware for years. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province and has vowed to retake the island using force if necessary. As Taiwan's military carries out its live-fire drill, China's People's Liberation Army conducted what have become routine patrols off the Diaoyu Islands. China, Japan, and Taiwan all claim the islands as part of their territory, but they are closest to Taiwan.
With the emergence of a new strain of bird flu, a major fear is that the mutation could cause the virus to be transmissible between people. And while evidence so far seems to indicate that hasn't happened, a new report by the World Health Organization is making everyone wonder just where is the H7N9 virus coming from?
As if the emergence of a mutated strain of bird flu wasn't bad enough, now a new mystery is making things even worse. According to a report by the World Health Organization today, 40% of those infected have had no contact with poultry. This adds to fears that the virus can be passed from human to human. 17 are dead out of 82 infected, mostly in or around Shanghai. Tens of thousands of birds have been culled and markets have been closed down. But based on the WHO report, almost half of those infected with H7N9 got the virus from somewhere else. The World Health Organization has played down the risk that the virus is transmittable between people. Spokesman Gregory Hartle says it's also possible another animal besides poultry is carrying the disease. And that's led many to suspect the 16,000 pigs that washed up in Shanghai's Huangpu River. It's a major source of drinking water for Shanghai's 23 million people. Authorities had said the carcasses did not affect the water quality and that it was still safe to drink. While most of the dead pigs were diseased, Chinese authorities have not announced exactly what killed them. Experts say it's also likely that wild birds that have nothing to do with poultry markets could be carriers of the bird flu. Earlier this week, Hong Kong microbiologist Professor Yun Kwok Yoon called for vigilance against the disease. He said when migratory birds move south for the winter, it's possible that the bird flu could spread to the warmer tropical climates of the south.
The bird flu virus has dealt a big blow to China's poultry industry. It is recording huge losses of more than 10 billion yuan. That's nearly $1.6 billion US. Authorities confirmed an outbreak of the avian flu about 2 weeks ago, after what they claim as confirmation from lab reports. Ever since, they have taken measures to slaughter large numbers of poultry and shutting down wet markets to try and contain the spread of the H7N9 virus to humans. Demand for poultry has gone down and the market rate for poultry has dropped as a result. High-quality chicken is selling for about 2 yuan per pound. That's down from 7 yuan before the virus hit. The low consumption and falling demand is also bringing losses to breeders. Demand for imported poultry has also fallen, and sales for both domestic and imported chicken have dropped by 80%. Now to the US. The bomb that went off at the Boston Marathon was a long way from China, but the impact is being felt. The blast hit 2 Chinese nationals. One of them, a student studying in Boston, has sadly died from her injuries.
The bombing in Boston, Massachusetts on Monday affected 2 Chinese nationals who were at the Boston Marathon. One has been confirmed dead and the other injured, but in stable condition. This bystander was filming the marathon when the bomb went off. She says she only missed being hit because she wanted to get a close-up of one of the runners.
I hesitated for a moment. I wanted to catch them kissing and hugging each other, so I followed them. As soon as I walked over, it exploded behind me. All my belongings, including laptop, credit card, ID and passport, were left there.
The girl who was injured is being treated at Boston Medical Center for damage to her abdomen. She has already undergone 2 surgeries and is in a serious condition, but was able to write a note saying she is okay. The Chinese girl killed in the blast was from Shenyang City, Liaoning province. One microblogger wrote on her Sina Weibo account, quote, "I went to the same high school as her. She is my fellow alumni, and we are from the same town. I can't believe the terrorist act hit so close to us. Terrorism isn't only America's enemy, it's the enemy of all of humanity." One article in China's state-run Xinhua news agency echoed that sentiment, saying, quote, "In this highly interconnected world, people of all countries are becoming more susceptible to terrorist attacks. The Boston assault serves yet another reminder of the danger and the task for every nation ahead." Chinese media was quick to utilize the overseas Chinese. One Weibo post applauding the US media for fast and transparent coverage of the Boston bombings is gaining popularity here. At the same time, the incident is raising criticism here that we don't pay enough attention to the events here in China. Just one day before the Boston bombings, 14 Chinese citizens died in a massive hotel fire, but media coverage is limited. On the other hand, state broadcaster CCTV has covered the Boston bombings intensively. Media reports say the hotel fire also injured 50 people. The cause of the fire is yet unknown.
And coming up after the break, Chinese censors take aim at Apple's app content. Hong Kong dock workers take their strike over low pay to the region's richest man, and a reddish haze blankets Xinjiang in the spring's first sandstorm. And welcome back. Apple has been in hot waters in the Chinese market since March after state-run media blasted the company over its customer service. Apple backed down with an apology. With China's lucrative market, how much is Apple willing to concede going forward?
Apple Inc., the maker of the iPhone and iPad, has big hopes for the Chinese market. It is Apple's second largest market after the United States, but the road ahead may be a tough one. Chinese state-run People's Daily has named Apple in a list of app stores that have been investigated for offering pornographic content. Apple was not highlighted specifically, but according to the Wall Street Journal, the mere mention could be problematic. Back in 2009, Google was also accused of spreading pornography by China's state-run media. Then it began to experience hacking attacks. Eventually, in 2010, Google pulled its search engine operations out of China. It said it did not want to continue censoring its content as requested by Chinese regulators. Apple appears willing to do more to stay in the Chinese market. On April 1st, the company issued this apology over warranty confusion after Chinese state media criticized the company's repair policies. On April 3rd, Apple removed an application from the China App Store. According to the developer, Ka-shing, it was because the app had content that's censored by the Chinese regime. On April 9th, a Chinese newspaper accused Apple of breaking Chinese law because of an app that can download materials on the Falun Gong spiritual practice. Falun Gong has been persecuted in China since 1999 despite no law to justify the crackdown. Online materials and positive writings on Falun Gong have been heavily censored in China. 2 days later, the same Chinese newspaper reported Apple has since removed the app.
Workers on strike at Hong Kong's largest container port are digging their foot in. As they continue to demand a wage increase, they're taking their demands to Hong Kong's richest man.
Hundreds of workers at a port operated by Hong Kong's richest man are into the third week of a strike to demand higher pay. On Wednesday, they gathered outside Ka-shing's office at Cheung Kong Center as the industrial action continues to impact the world's third largest port.
Now it's already 21 days into the strike, and HIT had not yet shown any sincerity in bargaining. So we have to escalate our struggle, and we want to put pressure on Cheung Kong.
HIT, or the Hong Kong International Terminals, is backed by Ka-shing. Dock workers say they haven't had a pay rise in 10 years. They're now asking for a 20% raise, but contractors for HIT is only offering 7%. So far, HIT itself has stayed out of the dispute.
Of course I'm unhappy with him. Throughout the whole event, he has never spoken a word from the beginning to the end.
Some labour activists from Australia arrived to show their support. They say they were shocked by the dockers' working conditions.
We think the conditions are appalling and are akin to a third world country, and we know that Hong Kong is not a third world country. It's a modern society, and we think it's a disgrace that people have to sit in a crane for 12 hours and they have to go to the toilet in the crane. So there's no hygiene, fatigue, and not to mention the low wages they're on. So this company...
Local media says the dispute has caused delays of up to 60 hours at the port. Each day the strike continues, it's costing HIT around $640,000.
Chinese leaders have been talking quite a bit about reform. One major event that would signal a change is the redress of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. This week, state-run media paid a surprising tribute to the former Chinese leader whose death led to the student protests. Is change in the air? Let's take a look.
Are Chinese leaders ready to address the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre? That was the speculation on Monday after state-run media published articles praising a former leader known for advocating reform. Hu Yaobang was the Secretary General of the Communist Party but was ousted in 1987 for being too liberal. He died on April 15, 1989, and his death sparked a 50-day-long protest that was eventually crushed by the Chinese army. This was later known as the June 4th Tiananmen Square massacre. Officially, the Chinese regime denies the bloody crackdown ever happened, and talk of the Tiananmen Square protests have been made taboo. But on Monday, state-run media ran pieces highlighting Hu's career, including his push for market economy and democracy. Analysts say, though, the Communist Party is still a ways off from revisiting Tiananmen.
Those who decided to crush the protests, like Li Peng and also Jiang Zemin, are still in the political circle even though they've retired. So they still hold influence, and I think it's not likely that June 4th will be redressed.
While the media blackout on Hu Yaobang may have been lifted, the same can't be said for another leader ousted for sympathizing with the protesters. Zhao Ziyang, the then premier, was put under house arrest for 15 years after objecting to the military crackdown. In articles remembering Hu Yaobang, both Zhao Ziyang's name and mentions of the Tiananmen massacre were notably missing.
The leadership after Tiananmen, including the successor of Jiang Zemin, will not redress the crackdown, because that amounts to admitting that they climbed to leadership illegally.
Jiang Zemin, the party chief of Shanghai before the Tiananmen Square protests, was eventually promoted. After supporting the military crackdown of Tiananmen protesters, he later became the leader of the Communist Party and the country's president. Analysts say Jiang maintains influence within the Communist Party even though he officially stepped down more than a decade ago.
And before we go today, we take you to northwestern China's Xinjiang region. A strong sandstorm moved in on Tuesday afternoon, blanketing much of the area with a reddish haze. China's National Meteorological Center said a cold front brought the sand from Xinjiang's deserts into the cities. Visibility is less than 100 feet. Cars are driving with their lights on, and pedestrians are covering their faces to keep out the wind and sand. Weather authorities said this is the first sandstorm for the spring, and it'll probably stick around until Thursday. And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more on our China coverage, please visit our website at ntd.tv, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTDonChina. Coming up is a segment of the 9 commentaries of the Communist Party. Stay tuned.